Before we start on the meat of the video, I have a donation link for the Indian Residential School Survivors Society in the description. Obviously, my videos aren't monetized, but I made a donation in the amount I received as stat pay as a settler who lives on Lekwungen territory. I'm also going to include some resources on residential schools and the reckoning that Canada is having right now. So I encourage you to read up on it and donate if that feels aligned with your values, particularly if you are Canadian. Hi, I'm Kayla Amanda. Welcome back to my channel. Thank you so much for being here. I have the world's worst, most hilarious mask sunburn from a demonstration that I went to on July 1st in support of residential school survivors and their communities. So you're just going to have to content yourself with a montage of me working on my book while we voice over about second quarter and move into third quarter goals. Let's get the bad news out of the way, and that is that despite finishing my first reread by the end of May, I have not yet finished all of the revisions that need to be done. June was kind of a mess in terms of actual writing days, or at least it was kind of a mess in terms of actual writing days compared to the rest of quarter two. Compared to quarter one, I did very well, I think. But that's because that in May and April combined, I only had 3 unscheduled non-writing days. Each week, I did give myself that one weekend day with no writing and no capitalism to turn off my brain and relax, but other than that, I was really on top of hitting my writing every day for those 2 months. In June alone, however, I did have 8 unplanned non-writing days, which don't include the 4 days I gave myself off when I finished my read through and could feel that my focus was really slipping. In my defense, I'm not going to count the 2 heatwave days because, I wasn't a human being. I was a baked potato. I was barely sentient, much less writing. So I have 6 unplanned non-writing days, which I don't have a good excuse for, which is double the total of the other 2 months combined. However, all in, my entire quarter 2 unplanned non-writing days is less than a quarter of the unplanned non-writing days for quarter 1, which I had 34. I think 9 versus 34, I'm doing okay. The last month of a quarter is really hard for me to be consistent in though, and I actually have a theory about it. It's sort of twofold. First, this year at the very least, I've been completing things in the last month of a quarter. So in quarter 1, I finished my drafting. In quarter 2, I finished my first read through. And that sort of tricks my brain into thinking that I'm done. I get that finished feeling, and then my brain goes, okay, well, we're done with this. Let's move on to a different project. Let's relax. Let's do something else. And while I do, acknowledge that I deserve some time off, a little celebration for finishing the next step, I do have to just move on to the next part of the process as opposed to actually stopping. So part 2, I've been pushing really hard for 2 months prior. I've been more diligent, more consistent, more disciplined, and eventually I think my brain just needs a break. I do this thing where I hold myself up to this standard set by other people, like the Courtney Project. I think, she can write a bajillion books on top of having a job, on top of having domestic responsibilities, so why can't I? But the truth is that that's not the kind of writer that I want to be. That's not the work ethic I want to have for my writing. There's obviously nothing wrong with it. I really admire the Courtney Project and I think that she's fantastic, but I don't want to be the kind of person who is constantly pushing to get a book out. That's not what's aligned with my values. I don't want to be a full-time writer. I don't want to publish multiple books a year and live off that. I don't want that kind of pressure with my writing, at the very least not now. So for me to constantly push like that and to really overemphasize that productivity is not healthy for me. It's not what I want. It's not in line with how I want to be a writer. And it's silly for me to try to hold myself up to that standard. But then I also do this worst thing where I compound it by telling myself you did finish an act and a half of read-throughs in just one weekend. You have had 3, 5, 7,000 word days, so why don't you do that all the time? Because you technically can. And yeah, I can, but they're not sustainable achievement for me. I can't do that every weekend. I can't do that every day. So I think I need to just relax a little bit on feeling quite so much like I need to produce in such a concrete way. And I need to be able to find a better balance for what productivity level that feels good for me, but also doesn't feel like I'm pushing myself more than I want to. Because obviously I'm gonna have days in which I do write 7,000 words, I do write 10,000 words. I have a weekend where I write a ton or edit a ton, and that's great. If I have a weekend or a day where I'm really motivated and I'm really inspired and it just feels good to be writing that much, I want to be able to pursue that. but I don't want to have to force myself into that because that's not something that I know is sustainable for me, and it's not something that I like really want to encourage in myself. Like, I always want writing to be fun. I don't really want writing to be a job, and pushing myself to produce at that level makes it more of a job than I want. And it's not like quarter two wasn't productive for me. It absolutely was. I finished my first read through. I'm done most of my revisions. I only have, I think, like 2/3 of an act left to do. And I only had 9 unplanned non-writing days, which is great for me. So there are like a lot of things to celebrate in quarter two, even though I didn't necessarily hit all of my goals. Quarter three is going to be different, however. I am abandoning my 2-day rule for the quarter because this quarter is the end of revisions and then like the beta process. That kind of scheduling doesn't work very well with those sorts of goals. Also, it's summer and it's hot, and it's evidenced by my wicked sunburn and my baked potato period. I'm not made for hot weather. Q3 goals are really simple. I am going to have revisions and questions ready to go for betas by the end of July. I'm going to work on my query letter and my summary pitch for Pitch Wars for August while trying not to melt like a forgotten popsicle. And then I'm going to synthesize beta feedback into a stronger draft for September prior to the Pitch Wars deadline. Here's the kicker though. I'm not actually going to submit as a mentee for Pitch Wars this year. I just want to be ready for it. There's a number of reasons that I'm not going to, and I can go into that in another video. But for me, the reason that I really want to be ready is a couple of years ago, I had this book that I was working on that I loved and adored and felt passionately about, and I so badly wanted to pitch. There was a perfect mentor, and it was just, everything was aligning perfectly, except my book wasn't ready. I wasn't ready with that manuscript. So this year, it's like redemption for me. It's, Pitch Wars 2, Electric Boogaloo. I really want to be in a position where if I wanted to pitch with this book, I could, to prove to myself that I can, to prove to myself that I can get there. So it's really important to me that I am ready to submit as a mentee for Pitch Wars, although I won't be applying to actually be a mentee. And part of that is that I don't want Kara and Alex's book to be my debut, which again, I can get into later. This is an exercise in finishing it and proving that I can, and in proving to myself that I am not just always gonna not finish my books. But thank you for sticking around so long if you actually did. I blame any incoherency and rambling on the fact that it's hot and my brain is pudding. Quarter three is going to look really different, but I'm going to try to be more on top of my YouTube stuff. I'm going to try to film some videos on like what writing my query looks like and how to effectively summarize something. So hopefully you will find that stuff interesting. I don't know if you will, but I hope I'll see you guys around. If you're looking for me pretty much anywhere else, I'm Kayla Amanda. That is Kaylughmanda, and I'll see you next time.